I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Have I Got News for You is back for another season. Roy Wood Jr., Amber Ruffin, and Michael Ian Black are finding the funny in the week's biggest stories. Have I Got News for You, Saturday at 9 on CNN, and stream next day on Max.
Hey, everyone. It is a national holiday. That means you are not going to be hearing from What Next today. But this feed will not remain fallow. That is because we are bringing you an episode from our friends over at How To, which is another great Slate podcast. It's a conversation with a couple of survivors of the Los Angeles fires. They're going to be talking about how you rebuild your life after losing your home. I will be back with more news tomorrow. Meanwhile, here's How To.
In the end, she got out her jewelry, their 2 cars, a couple other little things, a pair of shoes.
What pair of shoes, Laurel?
Oh God, so ugly. You know, like one of those, like, no offense to anyone listening here, like, I'm sure they're good for your posture, but Keens, you know?
Wow.
And like whatever was on her feet, you know.
Welcome to How To. I'm Courtney Martin. On today's show, you'll meet 2 people whose lives and families have been changed forever by wildfires. Now, even if you don't live with a Californian's constant concern about this destructive force, these 2 stories are a reminder that no matter where you live, a natural disaster could take everything from you, even if you think you're prepared for one. And that while coping with climate change is a strategic problem, it's also an emotional and even generational one. In North America alone, we've had a number of devastating, unprecedented fires in recent years. The Paradise Camp Fire in 2018, the 2020 fires in Oregon and Northern California, the 2023 fires in Canada and Hawaii, just to name a few. And as of January 7th, fire has been ripping through LA, leaving a path of destruction in its wake. At the time of this recording, 28 people have died, and 16,000 homes and other structures have been damaged or destroyed in the Los Angeles area due to these recent fires. Thousands of people are sorting through the ashes and wondering what's next. Which begs the question, how do you rebuild after your home, the epicenter of your life, has been burned to the ground? This is where we find today's listener, Jeff, who just lost his home in the Altadena section of Los Angeles.
I am a father of 3, husband to Jessica. All 3 kids really are amazing. We've got 2 older kids that have some medium needs or high needs, and they're on the autism spectrum. They tend to spend a lot of time online gaming and talking with their friends. And my 22-year-old is also an artist. 2 days after our house burned down, they painted a picture of our house burning down, captioned it, "It's going like a house on fire." So they work a lot through their own process using art and paint, and they're very talented. And then we've got a 7-year-old that keeps our life eventful. Everyone knows the 7-year-old because he will literally stand out in our front yard and talk to people as they drive and walk by and ask them how their day is going, what they're doing. Sometimes intrusive questions. We're working on that. But he's never met someone who's not a future friend.
Your family sounds so beautiful. You've got artists and gamers
and a future politician who is 7. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And a future mayor of Los Angeles. So tell us more about where your house was specifically. I know you were on a dead-end street, which was pretty special.
It was amazing. They all could go out on the street and play as much as they wanted. Our street is known in Altadena as the Peacock Street. There were 50 or 60 peacocks that live on our street.
Wow.
Which is fun and amazing most of the time, except when you're trying to drive on the street or during mating season. In April, it is the loudest street in a 2-mile radius. So our next house will have double paned windows for sure.
That's amazing. Well, let's talk about the fire now. How did you first hear about the Eaton fire, Jeff, and when did you decide to actually evacuate?
We heard about the winds coming before anything else, and we were actually more concerned about that for days before the fires happened. The fire started shortly after 6 o'clock, I believe, and we heard that there was a fire in Eaton Canyon, but Eaton Canyon is about 3 miles to the east of us, and the winds were blowing from northeast, but mostly north. And I wasn't concerned, even up to bedtime. I was certain that we were going to wake up the next morning and we were going to hear bad news, but that it wasn't going to impact us personally. I did set my alarm for 2 o'clock in the morning because I needed to get an eye on the situation and see if we were in any danger. And sometime between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., the wind shifted and carried the fire to the northeast of us. So when I woke up at 2 in the morning, my alarm went off and my wife was sitting up in bed, looking out our bedroom windows at the hills behind our house, and there were flames on the ridge. We could see the reddish orange glow. And pretty sure I dropped some expletives at that point, and then I threw on some shoes and ran outside to see if I could get a better look at how far it was and what was happening. When I got onto the street, I could smell the smoke. I could see ash starting to swirl around me. And the wind was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I was later told they were gusts up to 95 or 100 miles an hour, which is not common around our parts.
Yeah.
I ran down to the corner, took a look up at the mountains, and immediately ran back to the house and told Jessica, we need to go and we need to leave now. We were out within 30 minutes. And within that 30 minutes, the smoke became so dense, it was almost like an impenetrable fog around us. It was the most surreal experience because nothing looked familiar on our drive down the hill. All of the power was out, everything was dark, and things were already starting to burn. I had no idea where I was on the hill until we got further down the hill where the power was still on, and I was able to recognize where we were. But it was very disorienting, and it didn't feel like I was awake. The adrenaline was going so hard that I don't think that I would have said this at the time, but it was the most frightened I've ever been in my life.
Did you all try to gather things as you were, imagining you waking up the kids and kind of trying to mobilize everyone really quickly? Did you gather any of your stuff?
We had packed go bags earlier in the day. We were prepared with 3 days of clothes. We grabbed some dog food and cat food because we have 2 dogs and 2 cats, and woke up the older kids and told them we're leaving and we're leaving now, and saved the 7-year-old for last to give us a chance to talk ourselves down so that we weren't frightening him more than necessary. So
Yeah.
we were able to grab his weighted blanket and a couple of his favorite stuffed animals, and no toys, but we did have some of those things that mattered most to him, and were able to put him out in his booster seat in the car and surround him with his blankets and his favorite stuffies. But that was it. That and the dogs and cats all made it out as well.
Hmm. Well, I'm just so touched by the intentionality of that, to think that in a sudden moment like the one you guys faced, you were cushioning your sweetie with, stuffies is so moving to me. So you first landed at a hotel, right, for a couple days?
That's correct. We drove down the hill and pulled into a Hilton hotel that wouldn't even open the doors for us because they were booked solid. And we really didn't want to spend the next hour, 45 minutes in the car if we could avoid it. So I called a reservation line and talked to a customer service agent, and they said that there was a Hilton in Los Angeles that had 2 nights free. And I said, we'll take it. What's the address? And she gave me the address, and it was across the street from where we were standing.
Oh,
So
wow.
I have no idea how we got that room. It was tight, but in a weird way, the close quarters were somewhat therapeutic to some of us.
I'm guessing there wasn't a ton of sleep that night. When were you going to find out about the fate of your home? Like, was there a lot of unknown time when you're just sort of sitting with the ambiguity?
I think we were all so shocked and exhausted. I actually think most of us did fall asleep fairly quickly. We felt safe enough at that time, at that moment. Our house didn't actually burn down until midday the next day. In fact, our oldest adult drove up to our property against our wishes. They were taking basically our son's beach pail and filling it up with water and throwing it on a corner of the roof that was starting to smolder.
Wow.
And so that's when I jumped in our car and I was able to get a signal and talk with them. We could lose the house, we could lose our stuff, but I can't afford to lose them. So I needed them to get in the car and get in the car immediately and get out of there. Thankfully, they had left right before I got there. So they were safe.
Oh, gosh. Thank God. And then when did you finally find out the house is gone?
When I pulled up on the street to make sure that they were gone, that they were no longer trying to throw water on the roof, I could see that our carport was on fire and our neighbor's house was completely engulfed. And for a brief moment, I thought, well, maybe I can do something. So I started to approach our carport, and the neighbor's house, something exploded inside and the front window blew out, and a thick cloud of black smoke was just sort of thrown in my direction. And I knew at that point that it was useless for me to stay, that I was that I was in danger. And I got out of there immediately. And I knew at that point that there's no way it was going to survive.
So I'm sure it's, there are a million emotions, but can you describe a bit of kind of the emotional experience of that reckoning, and how are you doing now?
I can tell you that during that moment, I didn't have any thought other than I need to get out of here and I need to get out of here now. The houses were burning all over as I tried to make my way to our property. There was no emotion. It was strictly get out and get out now. Focus 100% on the task at hand. And I think this has probably been my avoidance technique, but that is why I put together this long to-do list and have been 100% focused on moving forward. And people are saying, "Oh, Jeff, you're so brave. You're really handling this well." And the truth is I'm probably not handling it at all. I am strictly trying to find a way for my family to move forward. And the first 2 weeks, we're trying to find a place for us to sleep at night. We were bouncing from hotel to hotel. And now we're in an Airbnb for the next 3 weeks. So we have at least a little stability there. But again, my life is all about filing paperwork and contacting agencies and obviously starting an insurance claim. Did that immediately. I'm still fairly numb to the whole thing. And I do have a counselor who tells me that this is going to hit at some point. And to be honest, I'm fine if it doesn't. It doesn't sound fun. I'm not looking forward to it. So, yeah.
Well, I'm sure there are a lot of people who identify with that numbness you're feeling too. So, I mean, we don't need you to be anyone other than who you are right now, Jeff. But I do think there are probably a lot of people listening who will think, "Oh, yeah, that's where I'm at too." And I'm so grateful that we have Laurel Braitman here today to help shed some light on all this, not only because I just know her to be such a heartfelt human who gets this kind of thing, but she's actually been through losing her own family home to a fire. And I think as I listen to you talk, Jeff, I just think, wow, this is one of those things that you really only understand if you've been through it to some extent, as someone who hasn't been through it. So, Laurel, welcome. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's just, it's an honor to be here. And Jeff, I know that these words are small and stupid, but I'm so sorry about what you're going through. It's brutal.
No, they're not small. That means a lot. One of the most difficult things I've experienced is the survivor guilt. People who have homes that didn't burn and they feel terrible. And I tell them every time it's a win for me too. Like it almost feels like we are united against this common enemy of fire. And anytime someone's house made it out, I'm just grateful for that.
For this conversation, I really wanted to put Jeff and Laurel together for a bunch of reasons. She writes a lot about grief and loss, and she's a dear friend who is one of the wisest, big-hearted people I know. But also, as you'll hear, Laurel is in many ways living Jeff's future. Her family ranch in Southern California burned down in 2017. She's lived through the heartbreak and the glimmers of hope that comes with rebuilding your home. We'll dive in after the break. I was snooping around on your, official profiles today, and I realized your Instagram profile says that you want to be the human equivalent of casserole. You bring people after shit hits the fan, which I just loved. What kind of casserole would you be, Laurel, if you were going to bring Jeff a casserole right now?
I mean, probably some sort of noodle kugel dish that's like can't make up its mind whether it's like sweet or savory, of like strange consistency, but nevertheless like fills you up, and you can eat out of it long past its expiration date in the fridge as long as you microwave it sufficiently.
I'm in. I'll give you the address after the podcast.
Great.
Okay, perfect. So Laurel is one of these people, Jeff, who has done so many things with her like one wild and precious life. She is a farmer, a teacher, a writer. Sometimes I'm like, what actually doesn't Laurel do? That would be kind of easier to pin down. But Laurel, will you just describe your kind of professional expertise a little bit and then get us into the story of your family home?
Of course. Thank you. I'll tell you what I don't do is check my email often enough and most other like executive function tasks. I am a nonfiction writer. I write mostly about medicine, history of science, animals, loss, grief, mental, and emotional well-being, our relationship to the natural world. I'd say that's my weird beat. And yes, I am a citrus and avocado rancher together with my family, about an hour and a half north of Los Angeles. And I run a program at the Stanford School of Medicine called Writing and Storytelling. And that's part of the Humanities and the Arts program at the School of Medicine, where I work with healthcare professionals to help them communicate better about the hardest things they experience.
One thing I'm very excited about is the peacock connection, Laurel.
Oh, yes. I got so excited when you were talking about that, Jeff. It's strange how many free-roaming peacocks there are throughout the citrus groves of Southern California. My parents bought this place at auction. It was kind of falling apart in 1978, 1979. And they moved in, and we've had peacocks here since then. Normally, they just kind of come and go, and they are a funny part of the ranch ecosystem. There are two that are peering in at me while I record this. They kind of follow me and my husband, and they make meaningful eye contact until we give them mealworms or I share some of my breakfast blueberries. But they sleep in the highest trees they can find at night, and they come and go. And they act like kind of big doorbells, I would say.
Yes.
Announcing when people come to the ranch. And I've always appreciated them for that. That's just one tiny part of the ranch. The rest of the ranch is really a commercial fruit growing operation. And I live here with my husband. And then in a house next door lives my brother, his wife, and my 3 nephews. And this has been my home as far as my conscious awareness goes back.
And Like Jeff, you have experienced fire. Can you take us back to that moment in 2017 when you first heard that fire was near your home?
Absolutely. Living with wildfire is not a new thing in California. Native people used wildfires to manage the landscape, and they are and always have been an important part of being a Californian. We've had lots of brushes with wildfires in the past, but what always happened was that, a fire truck would show up and they would stand on the roof and they would water it down, and we never had anything really threaten the house. In 2017, like this most recent bout of wildfires, there were just incredibly, incredibly high winds. And as you all probably know, like fire is behaving in new ways. And we can't look to past experiences to understand what's going to happen now. And in 2017, it came like a big wall of fire from our neighboring canyon down into our canyon through what is my favorite and most sacred place on the ranch, which is what we have not planted. So we have a big chunk of wildland here, which is just native oak forest and chaparral scrub. And that's where the fire came the hottest and the fastest. And it traveled down that sort of part of our canyon and burned the house down and a bunch of other associated structures, destroyed over 50% of our orchards. My brother had a small house on the property, and that was spared. My mom and stepdad and Antonio, who has worked with us for many years on the ranch, were able to stop the fire from burning his house down using hoses until we lost power, and then a small little tank of water that they borrowed from some community members. So my brother's house was spared, but the main house and everything in it was lost, and it was like a death.
And you were in the Bay Area at the time, right? When it all happened?
I was.
Yeah.
And I was getting texts from friends, and this isn't my first rodeo, as they say. So I had the Ventura County fire scanner up, and I was also listening to the chatter over the radios and watching the fire really closely and calling my mom and my stepdad who were in the house and begging them to pack up our things. I lived in, at the time, a tiny little 1-bedroom apartment in the East Bay, and everything I cared about, was here because I thought if anything was at risk, it was, my crappy little apartment in the Bay, not here. So I just started calling and begging them to get everything out while I was watching the fire. And I just kept calling and begging. And, they were eating ice cream. My mom had made some hot fudge sauce. I could hear them watching the news. I was just like, oh, okay. And I was just screaming into the phone, like, just pack it up. I'll be there in 6 hours. I'll help you put it all back. If I'm wrong, please, God, let me be wrong. Just humor me. In the end, she walked out of the house and she saw the fire come over the hill and onto the ranch. And that's when they started panicking. They fought it just absolutely bravely, the three of them. No one else came to help. And they finally left because they saw what was going to happen. They couldn't do anything else. And we had no power and they'd run out of water. So in the end, she got out her jewelry, their 2 cars, a couple other little things, a pair of shoes, but that was it. And
Amazing.
They drove the cars down to the end of the canyon, parked them, and then they went back. And that was really stressful because both my stepsisters and we all have our parents on Find My Friends. And, I could see what was happening with the fire and, was in the car with my stepsister driving down. But I could see that she'd gone back to the house site. And I knew there was still active fire. And so I just kept calling and begging to be like, okay, we know it's probably gone. Like, please save yourselves. But what I'll say now is that I understand, like my brother and I both, my brother, who is a firefighter, was off that day and he was on a road trip with a friend. So both of us weren't at home. And I know he lives with a certain degree of regret. He feels like if he was home, maybe he could have done something. I'm also really glad he wasn't home because I don't think he would have left either. We live in a post-insurance landscape, and, I wouldn't leave now. This isn't to say I don't think people should evacuate. It drives me crazy how people stay in their homes and then endanger firefighters and others, forcing them to come in and rescue them. I will not put anyone else in that position. And also, we have had to become our own firefighters here. We now have generators, we have pumps, we have sprinklers, we have fire hose, because we know now no one will come. And also we have no insurance. This is not going to be the case for people, who live in Altadena, live in neighborhoods. We are ranchers. We live deep in the country. We back up on wildland. Obviously, I don't think this is a reasonable choice for most people, but for many Americans who grow our own food and who live in areas of high fire danger, if we want fruit growers in California, we are going to need to learn how to also be firefighters.
I'm struck, Laurel and Jeff, that both of you had family members who went back. And also just that families, surprise, surprise, are complicated. And everyone has different ways of processing the feelings around this. Jeff, how are all of your family members doing now? Like, would you say others are kind of in the numb zone with you, or are people having differential reactions?
I think people are having different reactions. My wife and I went back up to our property last Friday. That was a very real moment for both of us. We got snippy with each other pretty quickly and took a step back and realized what was going on. And we were able to both say, I apologize. This isn't you. This is the fact that we're walking in 4 inches of ash that used to be our belongings.
Yeah.
But that was tough. The most difficult time that I had, aside from visiting the house, was I went to a donation event held by my company, and I was overwhelmed to the point of almost being incapacitated at that event by people's kindness first and foremost, but also walking around this giant conference room at my place of work and sort of had this mantra going through my head of, why am I here? Oh yeah, it's because I don't have anything anymore. It just kept repeating, and I couldn't shake it to the point where I had to leave and go sit down and just check out for a minute.
First, Jeff, I think you're doing an amazing job. You said one thing that I want to try to give you an alternative way that you may not be handling it and that it may come for you later, and that right now you're just feeling numb. I think you are handling it, and I think numbness is grief, and I think this is it coming for you. And yes, it's going to change, but I don't know if you've lost a person or another creature close to you before. I think we are best served when we look at these experiences like we would another loss, like as if we'd lost someone close to us. Because I think grief is really the only map I have for experiences like this. And so everything that you are feeling is normal. And the more you can do to admit that, I think the more license you give to the rest of your family members to grieve any kind of way they might be, even if it looks like not grieving. I think you mentioned something really wise around you've been dealing with all of this adrenaline and the to-do list. And I think that is protective and smart. And, it's only been a couple weeks. You're still in a defensive crouch. You're moving from rental or Airbnb to other rental. You're trying to figure out how to get through the day. That sometimes self-protectively, we keep the feelings that may level us or make us slightly less functional on a leash until it's safe to feel them. And some of us, that just never comes for, and other of us, it does. Some people get snippy. Some people check out. Some people are able to narrate really beautifully what they're going through the moment it starts happening. And most of us are all of those things at different times. So the last thing you should do is shame yourself in any kind of way for not feeling or not feeling enough because you were surviving. And I know you said people who keep telling you you're brave, and you're like, well, I'm just getting through the day. I think that's another parallel with grief, which is well, what's the alternative, just lay down in the ash pile, right? No,
Right,
you
right.
gotta get new socks. You gotta go buy pajamas. You gotta, make sure the kids are okay. You gotta find a new school to enroll them in. So I think part of this is just giving us license to deal with the great, kind of gaping hole that these sorts of things leave, and give yourself grace going forward to know that, some days you will, quote unquote, be dealing with this quite well and generously, and other days, you're going to snap and you're going to be too short with your kids, and that's part of it. But I think letting yourself feel the range gives them license and other people license. I wish I had done more work kind of early on to acknowledge the trauma that losing the house was. I started driving as soon as I saw what was going on with the fire. So by the time I got to the ranch, the fire was still happening. The house had already burned down, but the fire was still upon us. I just wish, even starting in those moments, that I could have acknowledged to myself that this really was a kind of trauma. It wasn't just quote unquote stuff. I think I told myself because we had insurance and we were so much better off than other people who had lost their houses but didn't have it, that I didn't really have a right. We were privileged and we should get up and on with it. And I don't think that helped me or my family. So while some comparison and feeling your blessings that you have them is good, I think it's also okay to feel sorry for yourself, sometimes aggressively.
I've started to recognize the important things that I've lost, and those are the ones that are most difficult for me. Most of the stuff we had is stuff. You can buy another TV, you can buy another couch. The letters that I saved from my parents and my sister from when I was in college, I'll never read those again, and hadn't read them for many years, and now I'm regretting that I don't have a clear memory of what they wrote about. Those are the hard things. I had a physical manifestation of their love and affection for me, and losing those is one of the most difficult things. But the other thing that you made me think about was that I also think I realized that the only way through is forward, and I'm not one to just sit and feel. If walking forward is the only way through this, then I am keen to get that going and make whatever calls I need to and talk to architects and contractors and start dreaming even with the kids about the future. I asked our 7-year-old, dream big. What do you want in your room? And he got very excited about the idea of having a door behind a bookshelf, like a hidden doorway behind a bookshelf. And I was like, that's fantastic. Yes, let's find a way to make that happen. Keep dreaming big.
That's awesome. My therapist told me something after the Thomas fire, which is the fire where we lost everything. And she said, what you lost that you were longing for are vessels, like that's the difference between stuff and the stuff you miss, right? The stuff that's just stuff, capital S, the TV, sheet sets, towels, whatever, right? And sometimes even more meaningful things or expensive things can be stuff. But the things, in my experience, that haunt you are the things that are vessels for memory, vessels for love. Obviously, you can't buy those things again, but it's not the thing itself. It's that if you lose it, you lose the memory cue. And I often wonder, how much poorer my memory is going to be because I don't have those letters and the photos and, the little
I
gifts.
worry about that. I worry as I get older and my parents aren't going to be around forever. And these were tangible ways for me to think about them and remember their kindness and their wisdom. And now that they're not there anymore, I worry about my memory fading as I get older and losing even more of them than I would have.
That is exactly the thing. That to me is the kind of savage pain of it. But then, as you say too, fire has been a purifying act for a long time for a reason. I think it's a terrible thing I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And also your 7-year-old gets to dream about their hidden bookshelf, right? I wouldn't be living here with my husband in the same way if the house hadn't burned down. My mom got really, really sick in the years after the fire. We think in some way that might have to do with everything she inhaled while she was fighting the fire. But I was called home, both to be with her as she died and also to, with my husband and my brother and my sister-in-law, my nephews, create a new future of this place. And I will tell you, like, the hardest thing in this post-fire life for me is wanting, I love stuff. I love things. I'm like, a crow. I love a shiny thing. I'm like the anti-Buddhist, right?
Yeah.
Like, I love stuff. I can't say goodbye to anything. Like, I collect everything. And the hard thing now is, like, I have found more vessels, right? And I am so scared. I can't stop collecting and building and making things and, planting new stuff here. And also, like, I live in terror of losing those things again. That is just a weird place now that I think tens of thousands of us around the world, more every day, are living with. Is like, how do you let yourself dream about the future and then get attached to things again when you know how easily they can be pulled from you? And I wish I had answers for you and myself and everyone else about that. And I don't. And I am just kind of trying to live my way through it. And, I have a list. I have a notes app in my phone of, like, the things that I would take, because if I'm away from here, I want to be able to tell my brother or a friend what to grab for us from the house if a fire is coming. And, it's a longer list than you'd expect, considering that, like, I lost everything else I cared about 6 years ago. So it's this funny thing where, like, the human memory is both blessedly short and also, goddamn, it's too short, right? Like, I wish we had a way to go forward that was just pure hopefulness, but I am afraid there's terror there in equal measure. God, if you figure it out, please let me know.
I understand. I do get it. Obviously, these things meant something to me, and I can see myself doing the same thing. And I have trust issues anyway, and I fear loss. So, I've got an interesting road ahead of me, to say the least.
After the break, we're going to talk about heading back to work after a disaster, how long it takes to truly feel at home again, and commemorating the anniversary of the fire. Stay with us.
This episode is brought to you by PDS Debt. Struggling with credit cards, personal loans, medical bills, or collections? It's time to stop worrying about that high-interest debt you've got piling up. PDS Debt can help you start saving money immediately. Their platform can analyze your unique situation and create a plan to get you out of debt. There's no minimum credit score required, and it takes 30 seconds to get your results. With PDS Debt, you'll take back control of your finances. Get a free debt analysis in just 30 seconds at pdsdebt.com/Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
We're back with Laurel Braitman, author of What Looks Like Bravery, an epic journey through loss to love, and Jeff, who has, as he put it, an interesting road ahead of him after just losing his home. I asked him what he thinks about when he looks out at a future beyond the immediate triage and paperwork.
That's a great question. One of the things that I've been trying to do is to inject some sense of normalcy back into my life by going back to work. And it's not going great. My employer has been very, very generous and forgiving and has told me, take as much time as you need. And I'm seeking structure, but I find that I'm even more distracted and flighty and ADD riddled than I was before. Every minute I have these thoughts of, oh, you need to check this, we need to do that. Someone emailed me, we need to respond to that. this form for debris removal just became available today. I need to talk to people? Do we want to hire a private contractor? Do we want to go with the government? I need to talk to insurance again. I need to talk to some lawyers. And all of these go through my head while I'm trying to go through email, trying to make sense of 400 emails that I still haven't made it through from the last couple of weeks. I'm down from 2,000, but still these last few hundred, I'm crawling through because I can't think. I just can't think straight.
Yeah. Well, Laurel, you've already admitted that you are no expert on email in normal times. So I'm not going to ask you to help Jeff with his inbox. But I am wondering if you can give him some thoughts around both just like what his brain is doing right now and is going back to work the healthiest thing, and about rebuilding, because I know you all rebuilt. And what did you learn from that?
Yeah. Well, first, let me normalize also that feeling that you have 400 things to do. I think surviving a natural disaster is a full-time job, truly. Like dealing with insurance. Oh God, do I feel you about the debris scraping? By the way, let the county do it. Don't hire a private contractor. They do a great job and it's free. But yeah, it's a full-time job and you need to treat it as such. And it's hard because I'm sure, still have your other job, but whatever it takes, again, I hate to come back, to this as grief, but, had you lost someone in your family, you would give yourself, I think, more of a pass when you forget to submit the thing, or when you realize like, oh, I just did 5 phone calls and now suddenly like I'm exhausted, I can't do more today. Or the opposite, like where you can find that all you can do is do administrative tasks in the wake of the fire. You're going to have all of those different experiences. When it comes to rebuilding, oh my God, it's a long road. I now live in the house that's kind of survived the fire that had originally been my brother's house on the ranch, but we are still dealing with replacing our electrical because it got so fried during the fire. So the reason I am recording this from the bedroom is because we have an electrician working in the other room figuring out some of our electrical work. It is 2025 and the fire happened in December of 2017. There are so many losses like ours in California that it just takes a real long time. Even if you're super on it, which my family really was. My best friend just moved into her rebuilt house a few weeks ago. There's a long waiting list for contractors and debris scrapers and everybody else. And, you alluded to this a little bit. One of the nice parts in that has been getting to know a new way of community in the wake of the fire, I will say. It's a terrible club, and also some really good people are in it. And it sure does have a way of resetting your gratitude meter, but also just whether or not something is a real problem or not. Right. So yeah, buckle up. It's going to take you years. And also like, thank God there's a long to-do list, right? Because what are you supposed to do otherwise? Like stare at the wall and think about all those wonderful letters you lost. I think sometimes, having the to-do list is a bit therapeutic.
I appreciate that. And also, I'm disappointed to hear that it's taken you almost 8 years now or 7 years. All I want is to give my family a place again. That's the thing that matters to me most right now. I just want them to have their own place. I want it to be ours. I want them to have a home to come home to. The idea that it's going to be that long is... I almost refuse to accept it. And not that that matters.
No, I didn't mean to scare you. I just think, we had somewhere to live by 2020. We weathered the pandemic. It wasn't pretty, but we had somewhere to be. I would say it's taken this long to do final touches, and also it depends on everyone's budget. It took us a long time to kind of figure out how to finance all of these things and how to do it. I don't think it's going to take you 6 or 7 years to fully rebuild. I think you'll be in something somewhere, but I think to feel like it's your home again, to feel like you have a relationship to the new plants you plant, to the tree in the front yard, that your electrical is working exactly how you want, that like you've arranged the furniture in the way that it feels like home. I'm only beginning to feel that way again. A couple nights a week, I have a dream that I am in the house that we lost. I can still hear the squeaky hinges on the door between the kitchen and the garage, right? Like I am haunted by a place that no longer exists. And I think that's going to be with me forever. And like any kind of loss, like that exists alongside, our beautiful garden that we've replanted and the greenhouse that, the glass melted on half of it. And that my husband finally replaced all the glass this summer. And we have a full suite of baby vegetables in there. And, life begins anew. I'll tell you one thing that's been really comforting for me is that the fire came through the wildest part of the ranch where we have lots and lots of California live oaks. And it was so hot, the fire, that it turned the dirt into what looked like ceramic. I've never seen anything like this before. It was like as if the dirt had been fired in a kiln. It was hard and shiny. And the trees turned black. They smoldered, sunburned from the inside out. You could walk past, you could hear a fire raging inside the trunk of a tree. I'd never experienced that in my life. Now, like 7 years on, almost 8 years on, those oaks are back. They're still burned on the outside. Some of them died, many of them didn't. And I wander around, I look at those trees, and I just try every day to be more like them. It sounds ridiculous.
No, it doesn't.
Find your metaphor. I think for me, it's finding things in the natural world that have been through fire and are still there that bring me a lot of solace. And that's been a gift being here, because I can look at the landscape that's been through what I have been through. And yet here we both are, that's helpful for me. And I don't think for you, it has to be a tree, right? But it'd probably be helpful to find something.
Yeah, I want to be that wild oak for my family, to be honest. I hope so.
Well, it sounds like you already are, Jeff, to me. I'm just hearing such commitment to each of them and their individuality and, really noticing their resilience in all these different ways. So yeah, I'm really already hearing it.
So our house burned down on my wife's birthday, and we never celebrated it.
Oh.
How can I help reclaim her birthday for her?
Oh my goodness. Look, see, you're already the oak tree. You're a great oak tree. You're an oak tree that throws parties even, maybe. Oh my God. Can you give her a do-over? She deserves her own birthday celebration, but also to say that you're going to reclaim it and that it also won't be about that day. Like the body keeps the score, right? Like she knows. And from now on, her birthday is going to be associated with this like deeply scary and painful time. I hate to go back to the metaphor thing, but I wonder if there's something that you all can do that is rooted in what happened, but also leaves room for the future, whether that is going to the house site, planting some seeds, figuring out what is germinated by fire. Here is where I think literal metaphors are our friend. Like, what can rise from the ashes of this that gives you both something beautiful, that is a celebration of life? That's where I'd start. Just like blowing out the birthday candles is a ritual, what is one that you guys can invent that helps you mark this day for both what it took from you and also what it's given you? Because it just sounds like, your wife is one of the great gifts of your life, right? Mm-hmm. So this day is always going to be something that gave you something that you treasure and also took something away from both of you. And so if you can figure out a way to honor both of those things at the same time, I think that will be more honest than figuring out like how to just make this day going forward just feel super celebratory. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense and is a brilliant idea, and I know exactly what to do. But I can't tell you because
what if she listens?
Right?
Well, can you tell us after the fact? Because I really want to know.
Well, I can tell you it's not going to be a box of matches and a pile of oily rags, which was my first thought.
Yes, we want the update. Laurel, did you and your family create any ritual for the day that your house burned? Like the anniversary of it?
We did not. We don't celebrate the day in any way. I always just find myself getting deeply uncomfortable in that part of December. What we did do, because we live here still, like most of our day is taken up with caring for the ranch in one way, shape, or form. When we decided to spread my mom's ashes after she died, that to me felt like a marking because we didn't put her in like a grave here. She wanted to be cremated and spread on the ranch. But instead of putting her in any one place, which to me felt like, well, what if there was a landslide, or, what if a fire took out the tree that was right above her, whatever. So instead, we had a neighbor and a dear friend who has a crop duster. We do a lot of things, ranching wise in these parts by crop duster, small little airplane. And he took up her ashes in the crop duster, and we had a bunch of her friends and our friends over. We mixed her with a 10-pound bag of gold medal flour so it would be visible from the crop duster, and spread her over the lemon orchard so she wouldn't be in any one place, but that she would be everywhere. And that really helped. So I'd say, our life here is kind of a ritual to the place. And so is all of our, family fire academy drills. But no, I had to do one on my own because I had so much kind of fear and was having so many flashbacks to the fire. And I actually did a therapeutic MDMA experience, which was really helpful just for my own fire sort of PTSD. And that's been ongoing. And I've needed help both in therapy and outside of it to kind of live with this fear and anxiety. But yeah, I think in terms of ritual, it was probably, spreading my mom in no one place, but also everywhere.
I think that's amazing.
It's pretty weird, but
I don't think so at all. I think it's beautiful. I love it. That's such an honor to her. That is what a great way to honor her and her life on the ranch and everything that she put into the land and the family that she gave to the land. That's amazing.
We plant trees for every major birthday or wedding or death. So we do that all the time. That might come into your ritual too, maybe, or when you guys move back into the house. The most hopeful act, I think, is to plant a tree that that you won't live to eat the fruit off necessarily, or to see it grow to its tallest height. It's an act of hope in the future. And I think that's as much a part of dealing with wildfire and other natural disasters as we can do.
Thank you.
I love that. Oh my gosh, I could talk to you two forever. And I am going rogue here because my producers have not said this is okay, but I'm like, should we just talk every 6 months for the next
oh yeah,
rest of our lives? Well, because I think, Laurel, you have so much to offer at different moments in this process. And Jeff, I know we're catching you at just this very beginning. And so, in any case, I hope you'll be in touch with us. And I also kind of do hope the three of us can talk again. And Jeff, just please know that, we're here for you and your family and just have such profound admiration for how you're navigating all of this. And Laurel, thank you so much for your time and your weird, perfect wisdom.
Yeah, thank you, Laurel.
Thank you. And good luck out there, Jeff. If you need anything, I also have like a little document I can email you about what was helpful with dealing with insurance claims if you want. The little
I would love
nitty gritty for the airwaves. But if you want to talk about insurance claims, that's a fresh hell.
Yes, it is. And I'm getting my hands on everything I can. And I would be honored to come back. Apparently, this is going to be quite the long journey. And there's going to be a lot of updates that happen along the way. I'm happy to help however I can, and I'm happy to come back.
Awesome. Thank you both so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for showing us how to in all things that matter.
You can see the painting that Jeff mentioned earlier. It was made by one of his kids, and it depicts the destruction of their family home. You can find it in our show notes for this episode. It is really something. Now, if you want more of Laurel's sage wisdom, I urge you to read her memoir, What Looks Like Bravery, An Epic Journey Through Loss to Love. And actually, Slate Plus listeners are in for a special treat. Laurel is going to read a passage from her memoir and explain why guilt is only useful once. This insight helped me so much when I read it, so stick around. If you aren't already a Slate Plus member, you can subscribe now on Apple Podcasts by clicking Try Free at the top of the How To Show page. Or visit slate.com/how-to-plus to get access wherever you listen. The episode is available for you to listen to right now. We'll see you there. Are you recovering from a disaster, literal or emotional? Send us a note at howto@slate.com or leave us a voicemail at 646-495-4001, and we might have you on the show. And if you like what you heard today, please give us a rating and a review and tell a friend. That helps us help more people. How To is produced by Rosie Belson with Kevin Bendis. Joel Meyer is senior editor, and Derek John is executive producer. Merritt Jacob is senior technical director and composed our theme music. Charles Duhigg created the show. Carvel Wallace is my co-host. I'm Courtney Martin. Thanks for listening.